This little device tells you something most car people completely ignore, but it can make or break your horsepower. And this is my Trailblazer. It's been a solid performer, up until recently at least. About 3 weeks ago we went to the drag strip to test a new part, and I was sure it would run faster, but instead it was noticeably slower. The same car, same tune, the only difference really being the weather. Here are time slips from the last time we were out and the most recent time we were out, really the only difference being the density altitude. So I decided, let's do a real world experiment and put the car in a controlled environment and lower the DA and see what the outcome would be. So let's see how much weather really affects your car's performance. So our plan was simple. We wanted to do the two dyno pulls, one in low density altitude conditions and another in high density altitude conditions. Same car, same tune, same setup, and ideally all in the same day. But we had some challenges. The first challenge was, where could we actually conduct this test and control the environment? Most places don't have the tools or the space to manage temperature, airflow, and humidity. The second challenge was, even if we did find the right location, would we be able to lower the density altitude enough to see a measurable horsepower difference? That meant cooling the air, drying it out, and monitoring it. And number 3, we're in Florida. It rains basically every afternoon in the summer, which meant finding a same day weather window where we could do both tests, hot and cold, without Mother Nature ruining the plan. Fortunately, I knew someone that had a dyno local in the area, so all I had to do was reach out. So I reached out to my buddy Justin, and when I told him my idea for the experiment, he was completely on board. He has a dyno at his shop and a small business called Backyard Dyno. He lives on a small slice of paradise complete with chickens and goats, and one time, even had a goat on the dyno. So all that was left now was to load up the Trailblazer, install all the AC units and dehumidifiers, turn everything on, and wait until the next morning. We're in the shop. We've had both ACs pumping. With the DA dropping in Florida like overnight, it's already lower than it is during the day when it's scorching hot out. And right now, this is what it's showing. And I think it's going to raise about 1,000 to 1,500 this in the afternoon. So we're going to go ahead and do a dyno, show you what this is at, like accurately reading at the moment, and see what kind of power we make. And we'll get our first dyno pulls with a lower DA. So let's see what it made. It made 508 rear wheel horsepower and 552 rear wheel foot-pounds of torque. Now, as you can see, it was achieved with a DA around 1400. This was made possible due to the dehumidifiers and the ACs that we had going in the shop, plus Justin's shop is completely spray foamed. Now, although we did these pulls around 8:45 in the morning, outside it was already over 2,000 DA, which is crazy, but that's what you get in the middle of summer in Florida. The humidity definitely plays a massive role. Inside the shop, it was much less humid, around 53.47, which sounds pretty high, but outside it was already over 70% humid. Now, this was achieved with a 17.77 peak boost. You can see here, right around 73 miles an hour. Now, although we've made more power in the past, these dyno numbers are really solely just to show what we're making now and what we will make in a higher DA. So keep that in mind. These are also uncorrected numbers. We don't want the values to be corrected using standardized data. We want it to be uncorrected and showing raw numbers for the environment that we are currently in. So let's go ahead and do our second pull and see what it makes then. But first, what is density altitude and how can it affect my engine's performance? Well, imagine this jar is your engine cylinder. And the air inside, well, that's your horsepower potential. Now, when the DA is low, the air is more dense, which means you can stuff more oxygen molecules into each intake stroke. And more oxygen equals more fuel, which equals more power. But when the weather gets hotter or you're at a higher elevation, the air gets thinner, which means less oxygen every breath. And that's called high density altitude. And your engine feels like it's at an elevation even at sea level. Even though we're not in the mountains, the car thinks it is because the air is so thin. And that's what density altitude is, a corrected altitude value based on air density. Simply put, density altitude equals performance altitude. So the next time your car feels slow like mine did, it might just be the weather, not your tune. moment of truth. As a reminder, the first pull we did with the lower density altitude, we made 508 rear wheel horsepower and 552 rear wheel torque. Well, this new pull that we just did with the higher density altitude, it made 439 rear wheel horsepower and 512 foot-pounds of torque. That's a massive, almost 70 horsepower loss. Again, nothing changed. A 12% drop in power just from an 1,150 foot increase in density altitude. Now imagine having a race with 70 less horsepower, not because anything broke, just because the air changed. And this is what your car is fighting against on a hot and humid day. That's exactly what your engine sees. It's why your tune may feel off, but it's not the tune, it's the molecules. The same car, same dyno, same tune. The weather stole nearly 70 horsepower. So if you retain anything from this video, just know that it does make a huge impact on the performance of your engine. So yes, density altitude isn't just a nerdy weather number. It's real, it's measurable, and now it's proven. And to test a theory, and just for the heck of it, because we were already here, we wanted to run it one more time just to see how it reacted. And like we suspected, it continued to lose power as the heat increased in the shop. Again, hotter air, less dense, less power. But why? Our intake and manifold temperatures were climbing, which in hindsight makes a lot of sense because it was hotter, and naturally, hotter air going into the compressor is going to yield hotter air going into the manifold. But talking with Justin, we thought, what if we dumped ice into the water tank? Would it actually cool the intake enough to give us more power? As most of you know, I run a 6.7 intercooler with a CTSV heat exchanger, and I run an ice tank in the rear. Because here's the deal, cooler air equals denser air equals more power. So if the heat soak was robbing us, this should give us a little bit back in theory. So time to test the ice hack. Let's see if it actually works. And the results were insane. It made 467 wheel horsepower, which in comparison, the pull before it made 428. That's a 39.6 horsepower gain just from adding ice. And it actually lowered our intake temps by 39 degrees. Insane. Our last pull, it was at 126 degree manifold intake temp, and this pull, it was 87. So it's safe to say that this air to water setup is really efficient. To gain almost 40 horsepower just from adding some ice is incredible. I want to give a huge shout out to my buddy Justin for letting us use this dyno. He was super cool and really enjoyed doing this project, and I look forward to doing many more science projects with him in the future. We really hope you liked the video, and I hope you stick around for more.
That it was generically a big surprise to anyone. I don't like how I said that.